Hi, I'm Jim DeCola, Master Luthier for Gibson Guitars. Welcome to Gibson's Guide to Guitar Setup and Maintenance. I'm going to show you how to properly polish your guitar. Now, it sounds simple enough, but it's not so simple, especially with a finish like Gibson's, which is a nitrocellulose lacquer finish, considered the finest instrument finish. It is, however, a little bit more delicate than some of the polys like a lot of import guitars use, but the reason it's desirable is because it's a thinner finish, so it resonates more, and even on an electric guitar, that's important. Being nitrocellulose, it will age and develop a patina over many years, but if you want to keep it fresh and polished, that's what we're here to show you. First thing is to make sure you have a good quality polishing cloth and polish. Here I have our Gibson polish and Gibson microfiber polishing cloth. We also supply it with a lot of our guitars in a Ziploc bag. And I'd recommend when you're done to put it back in that Ziploc bag. That way it's not going to attract dust and contamination that could possibly scratch your finish. So keep it clean and it'll serve you well. It's a great quality polish cloth. So the first thing you want to do is spray the cloth itself with the polish. I recommend spraying the polish about 6 to 8 inches away from the polishing cloth just to get the whole surface kind of misted. With a moist polishing cloth, you'll have less chance of putting scratches in the guitar. With a dry cloth, sometimes just the fact that it's dry, you can kind of put scratches in the guitar if you're polishing it too hard. Start in a small area and polish in a circular motion. And if you polish in a circular motion, you have less chance of applying too much pressure and causing like long scratches in the guitar. And it's just easier to keep an eye on what you're doing as you go in a circular motion like that. And if you need to, you can come back and re-wet the polishing cloth slightly. And you can go over the whole surface of the guitar. Now you can use the polish on your hardware. If it's just, has regular fingerprints or maybe a little bit of sweat, if you're really playing, you can go over and clean your hardware with that, and it will keep that clean as well. And there are specific metal polishes if it would become corroded, but right here we're just talking about the actual cleaning and polishing of the lacquer finish. And again, I can't stress enough to keep that cloth moistened and clean. So here, we're working on that finish on the front, and you can see it's nice and clean. On the back or darker surfaces, sometimes they'll show a little bit more scratches. The nature, like say an ebony finish will highlight scratches and showcase them more than say a natural finish. In this case, right here I have a little bit of residual dust on the back. So I'm not going to polish that out. I'm going to take that cloth and kind of dust it. And I'm going to knock that stuff off. Because if I just go in there with the polishing cloth, I'm going to potentially be grinding that stuff into the finish. And that's not good. Any dust like that, while it might seem harmless, can potentially cause scratches. So now that dust is gone, I'm going to go through and do the same thing. So working in a circular motion, and you can go over your control covers and just cover that whole guitar like that. So again, it's not rocket science, but if you're not careful, you can actually put more scratches in it than remove. Next, through playing, because you're doing so much fret work, they can get a lot of buildup and sweat and grime from your hands. So a lot of times it doesn't appear that it's as dirty as it is, but you'll feel it and it'll kind of drag. So keeping the neck polished and clean will just make it feel a lot better and a lot more effortless as you're sliding and playing alongside that neck. That's it. When it comes to the headstock, you want to be careful, and a lot of times I'll fold up the polishing cloth like so, and I'll kind of get inside the strings And you want to be careful because you don't want to poke your finger on the sharp string ends. When you clip the strings, they can be very sharp. So by folding the cloth up like that and lightly polishing in between and keeping your fingers a good distance away from there, you have less chance of poking your fingers with a sharp string. I know because it's happened to me many, many times. Now, also when you get done playing, you can go ahead and you could use that same rag and wipe down your fingerboard. However, I would recommend using a separate polishing cloth and some string cleaner. You can use that same cloth, but it'll pick up it'll turn gray from polishing the metal, and it's really microscopic metal particles as you're polishing it up, and that can possibly contaminate the cloth and cause scratches on the guitar. So while you can lightly do that, I'd recommend a specific polishing cloth and some string cleaner to polish your strings and fretboard when you're done playing. But if you keep your guitar clean like that, it'll play easier, more effortless, and look great for many years to come. Now we have the guitar polished. Now I'm going to show you how to work with your satin finishes. Now our satin finishes are still nitrocellulose lacquer. They just have a flattening agent in the lacquer that causes it to become flat or satin. It's a very earthy kind of look. A lot of people prefer it because it has kind of a dry feel, especially on the neck. And for certain guitars like this ebony in satin, it kind of has like a gothic and just kind of a cool vibe to it. Again, you're going to polish it just like you would a regular gloss finish. However, you want to be careful not to apply too much pressure, because with a satin finish, if you polish very, very hard, use too much pressure, or do it way too often, you'll actually buff the finish out. So again, lightly polish it, put the polish on your cloth, and just polish it like you would your gloss guitar. Just make sure you stay away from areas where you put a lot of wear, like here your arm will typically, through a lot of use, over time, your arm rubbing across the body like that will actually shine that finish up. So if that's the case, and you want to keep it satin or on the back of the neck, you can actually dull it back down. You have to be very careful, and you can only do it so much, because if you do it continually, you're going to wear through the finish. But you could use like a white buff puff or a white Scotch-Brite pad. And it's kind of like a synthetic steel wool. And you can lightly, especially on the back of the neck, kind of wipe it down with that, and it will polish and clean and kind of lightly abrade that surface, so it'll keep that satin finish. On the body surface, I recommend not doing that unless you're really at that point to where you want to go over the whole thing, because to keep that satin finish uniform is kind of hard to go back after the fact and blend it in with something like that. At that point, if it's so heavily needed, then you'd want to cover that whole surface. But again, same thing, still nitrocellulose lacquer. It's just very thin and has a satin finish. So polish it in the same manner, and it will serve you well. Thanks for tuning in, and please check out the next episode of Gibson's Guide to Guitar Setup and Maintenance.